We're here with the Players Coalition today.
Back here with the Players Coalition.
We're here with Mr. Anquan Bolden.
Eagles safety Malcolm Jenkins. Saints linebacker Demario Davis.
Jason.
There you go.
And Devin McCourty.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thanks for having me on here, man.
Can you explain just a little bit more about your background and your involvement in social justice work?
Sure, absolutely. So I am at Morehouse College. I'm a professor of psychology who does research in identity and looking at identity from kind of this asset-based perspective. And I've historically focused on Black boys and Black men and looking at them from positives. As opposed to pathology, which is so often how it is that we engage in the entry point for people who are marginalized, Black men and Black boys in particular, at least in terms of my research. And so in engaging young men and young boys in that way, one of the things that I say is that the better you're able to understand and look at your strengths in yourself, the better tool you're able to be within kind of the body politic and within democracy writ large. And so that has led to a lot of my work in social justice and social impact. At the school, I'm also head of the Institute for Social Justice Inquiry and Praxis. And that's one of 4 institutes that comprise the Andrew Young Center for Global Leadership. And what my institute does in specific is it's interested in looking at all of these different ways of creating and engendering social impact. But what is it theoretically, right? But what does it look like when the rubber hits the road? Practically, yeah. What exactly is it that folks can do and are doing, and how is it that they are able to be trained to be leaders that are aligned with a freedom agenda? Of course, as you well know, there are as many ways to define social justice as there are people who are doing it. And so one of the first things we want to do is just kind of figure out from your perspective, how do you define social justice? What does it mean to you?
I mean, just when I think of that, I just think of, I guess, whatever a person deserves as far as punishment. Like I told my uncle, he asked me a question a couple years ago. I said, there's no right way to protest. You just protest. Believe in what you believe in, you go out there.
So this idea of doing something actively for kind of the betterment of other people, being able to have equity that makes sense, like equality across the board? In terms
I mean, you just, you treat everyone, no matter the skin color or anything. If you commit a crime, you do anything with a penalty. I think everybody should be treated the same, equal.
The thing that I respect about you is that you haven't forgot about Mississippi. And that as current time right now, where there is prison reform going on in Mississippi, specifically with the Parchment Correctional Facility, you've been able to step up in a big way. If you can explain to them what has been going on in Parchment and why you wanted to make sure that you were involved with this prison reform movement that's going on in Mississippi right now.
Man, it's so many layers. It's so many layers to that. First of all, what people have to know about me, if anything going on in Mississippi, I'm trying to be a part of, especially if it's progressive or about doing the right thing and pushing us towards a better city, state, country. If it's involved in Mississippi, I'm gonna be a part of it because that's where my heart is. I think what's happening at Parchment is a part of a much larger conversation.
Absolutely.
We have this problem with mass incarceration, but what does that really mean? What is the problem of mass incarceration? Well, we have too many people are going to jail and being incarcerated. Then during their stay, they're staying in horrible conditions. Like they're going in and they're coming out worse than they were when they were going in because of the type of environment that prison is. So there's no reform, there's no rehabilitation, there's no, it's almost like you're being done away with when you go to jail. But you got to think about going to jail and going to prison. That person isn't gone forever. They got to come back into society. So you're going to send somebody in one way for a crime and punishment, but they're going to come out worse than they went in? Like,
added trauma on trauma.
Yeah. That's not a good thing for anybody.
Yeah.
And then third, we don't have a good enough plan for helping people reintegrate into society. So just the prison system is right now is profit over people, and that's a problem. And it's on the front end, it's on the time that they're there, because the people, it's better to have more people go to jail because they make more money, because they get paid by the government for how many how many beds they need. But then two, they're keeping their costs, their expenses low, and their profits high. net revenue high because they're not going to spend the amount of money that they need to spend on the people that are there. So the conditions are inhumane. And then they're not spending any money on rehabilitation programs and reentry programs to help these people reintegrate into society. So it's just a broken system.
So in your experiences, both professionally and in your lifetime, what have you seen in terms of trends of where we've been versus where we're going? And do you think we're headed in the right direction?
Yes, I mean, I'm an eternal optimist. I mean, I look at assets and strengths, and I think that, if we look at where we've been and where we're going presently, there's always struggle, and so there seem to be these touch points and these flash points of horrible examples of social injustice. And what oftentimes is the case, obviously, is that people are able to rally around and look at how it is that things are unjust and figure how it is that we need to look at new and innovative ways to enfranchise people. And so we know that in terms of marginalized folk, optically, the marginalized folk within the United States have been black folk, right? The sons and granddaughters and grandsons of enslavement. And so optically, that's something that we consistently look at. It's America's original sin, many people would say. And in looking at how it is that people of color and folks who are coming from marginalized communities are treated, and especially with the evolution of technology, being able to see that, in real time, it's a tragedy to see where it is that we are, but it also provides us an opportunity to figure out how it is that we're not going to do the things that we've done in the past, and really hold people accountable in many ways because of the evidence and the proof and the illustration we have of being marginalized and maligned. Can you talk a little bit about some of the work that the Players Coalition has been able to do? I know that we have so many injustices that you've said in terms of marginalizing people in this country, but the Players Coalition and the players have had a lot of wins in terms of the successes that have come together because of your mobilization. Can you talk to a few of those?
That's been one of the things that we wanted to be intentional about, bringing guys together that are like-minded, guys who, and the thing is, like, guys have been doing things individually for a long time. Like, I've had a personal foundation for like the last 17 years. I think I started like my second year in the NFL, and I've always wanted to impact my community. And I think when you first come into the NFL, you understand that you have the ability to impact people, but you don't know on what level. I knew how people viewed me where I'm from. I didn't know the view of everybody of me world, nationwide. You know what I'm saying? So I knew that, where I come from, where I went to school, where I went to college, I had the ability to impact people. Not knowing what that looked like nationally, but for me, it was to bring guys together who had a platform and use that platform for some good. You know what I'm saying? And like we talked about the injustices that have gone on in this country, I think one of the most powerful things that we can do is educate people. Because, and the reason I say that is because, like, there's a lot of things that go on in this country we don't have a clue about. We don't even have enough time to sit here and rattle off the number of things that is happening in this country. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of the times it doesn't get addressed because we don't shine a light on it. Anytime you shine a light on something, you have the ability to change it.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So for me, that's why I do what I do.
Even inside the game, that's what I do, but this is who I am, and so I can't just turn off my ears and turn off my heart and turn off my mind to things that I'm seeing, and so sometimes I just have to table it to when I can get to it. Last year, Josh Norman and I, we went to Flint, Michigan, and went down to the border. We had already planned that while the season was going on. Here we are having conversations like, as soon as the season over, we're gonna go here on this day, we're gonna go here on this day. Like, we just had to table it because, of course, you got this colossal of a job in front of you that requires a lot of time and energy, and we're gonna do that. But I'm not just gonna shut off, who I am as a person and the things I feel on the inside. I just have to make sure when I have time. Unfortunately, our season was cut short early, much earlier than we had anticipated. And when it was over, it's like, okay, well, it's time to be on mission. Here's an opportunity. And I mean, my pops were sitting down, and just kind of discussing the season. And he was showing me videos that was going on in Parchment. He was like, man, we got to do something, man. Like, it was a fire going on, and the people were recording live on the video.
Mind you, these are phones that they're sneaking in.
Yeah.
The inmates are the ones that are exposing all the inhumane conditions that they're facing that we're seeing that started this entire movement. You're seeing this at the same time your season's ending.
That's crazy. And the response to that was the reason why we have this controversy is because the inmates were sneaking phones in. Like, if they would have never snuck phones in, nobody would know about what's going on. Like, what kind of response is that by anybody responsible for this?
Because who knows how many other Parchments there are across the country right now.
Oh, there are many. And it's on us. I'm grateful for the inmates who stood up to get that out. I'm grateful for the officials who have taken time to say, hey, we got to do something about this. This is a problem. And I'm grateful for everyone who's using their platform to bring about change, not just here in not just in Mississippi, but around the country. You know, it's going to take a collaborative effort. It's going to take all of us playing a part to make sure. I mean, our country has the greatest ideals ever, but we got to make sure that we're living up to the ideals and morals that we're putting out.
Did you checked out Parchment while you were down there, or what did it involve in your movement there when you went down there? Did you see anything, or were you there to speak up? How were you engaged and involved in a firsthand perspective there?
Well, I always try to spend time on the ground level. I went to the rally, and at the rally, there was many people. A couple of friends of mine that I went to high school with had did time in Parchment. And to hear their stories, you know, and them talk about, like, man, people are being treated like worse than dogs in there. Like, he was like, people are being treated worse than dogs. And his exact words was, you can't leave your dog out in the cold. You can't leave your dog out in the cold, but in Parchment, they'll leave you out in the cold. That was his exact words to me. And I'm like, dang, that's messed up. And you know, so being on the ground level and hearing these stories, and no, I haven't gone over the Parchment. I don't have to go over the Parchment. Like, empathy doesn't require that much of us.
Absolutely.
You know, to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes. Like, everybody screaming inhumane conditions, but you seeing bloody bodies on, like, you don't have to be there to know, like, this is a bad situation.
Their words speak for itself. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like, it don't take much for us to empathize, and that's on us that we choose to do that or not. But I mean, even if you go to the understanding Parchment and how it was built, Parchment was built post-slavery with a slavery mentality. It was built on a mentality, like a plantation mentality. And it was designed for black people to remember their place underneath white people. That's the mindset and the foundation of this place, you know? And so it's gonna be hard for this, when you have a foundation like that, for that to change, you know? And now it's just a warehouse of inhumane treatment. And something has to change drastically.
We're at a unique point in time that we've never been at before. Everyone has a camera, everyone has a cell phone that they can essentially just publish to the world an injustice that they're seeing.
Yeah.
Thinking back to some of the issues in the Black community that we did see on social media and publicized in the early 2010s, what would you say is the effect on the psychology of seeing all of that so much, that oversaturation?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's an important one to look at. One of the things is that as people are going through physical, psychological, and emotional trauma in the act, to revisit it over and over and over again continues to can have the capacity to continue to trigger and to traumatize in ways that folks might not be able to be as effective as one would want to be, right? And so I think that I teach a class, Black Men, Black Boys, in the Psychology of Modern Media. And one of the things that I talk about in class frequently is you want to make sure that you have a diet. You want to make sure that you have a healthy diet of things that are real and that are searing and that are important to look at. But you don't want it to be something that you're taking in consistently, because oftentimes what that can do is it can compromise your emotions, and your emotions many times can betray you, right? Because you're operating out of this space of feeling exclusively. You always want to have feeling, but you want to make sure that you're methodical and logical in being able to put feelings and heart, soul, and practicality into play.
So would you say that this overexposure is leading to a desensitization when we're seeing all of these images come up on social media?
Well, I don't talk in absolutes like that. I think certainly that's important to look at, and it can be the case. You know, if you're sitting in front of something that is depressing, that is representing you and is representing you in a space of other, then certainly you can oftentimes feel despair and hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing that I think is so important is how is it that we organize and we find kind of bases and foundations to where people can feel hopeful, and not just feel hopeful, because again, I think that we don't want to be rhetorical in the work that we do in terms of social impact and social justice, but how can there be a feeling that triggers activity?
The most recent change that we've seen, newly appointed Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves shut down Unit 29, which was described the most notorious unit within Parchman, where a couple deaths occurred there. Is that enough?
Definitely not enough. I mean, it's a start that something has to be done, and being willing to move towards it. When you have such a drastic situation like this, just shutting down a unit, of course, is not going to be enough. The most important thing in prison is they need proper resources. These are still human beings in there. They need an adequate amount of food. They need proper bedding, and they need proper time with socialize. They need proper time to go out and come in. Like, human beings exposed to certain conditions is proven to break down mentally. And that's why people come out of jail with post-traumatic stress disorder. And solitary confinement, like any psychological study will tell you that is not effective for the human being. That is not a form of punishment. That is a form of torture. And it's gonna have drastic consequences. You know, things like that. And being underfed, nobody deserves to be underfed. Like, because you gotta go do time, you deserve to be like, yeah, you gotta go without 2 meals a day. Like, what? You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, not having proper water, not having, like, the basic essentials. You know, I'm not telling them they need to be up in there having paradise, you know, but, like, basic essentials, we all have a right to that. Like, they don't have those things, so I think the first thing in any type of reform is making sure that they have the basic essentials that they need to be a fundamental human being, you know, and so, but also it needs to be opportunities to rehabilitate. Like, how do you help this person grow physically, mentally, and spiritually? Do they have opportunities to do that? Do they have proper classes being taught? Do they have proper educational opportunities, proper trade school opportunities to learn trades? Do you know in a lot of prisons, they have people working trades, but they can't have the ability to get a certificate in that trade. So when they come out, they can go and get a job. They don't do that. So you go in and work and make these prisons money, but then you don't allow to get a certificate in that trade that you're already working on? That is crazy.
Modern day slavery.
Yeah, you know, and so it's just free labor. And that's a problem. So, like, we need to think about, like, the conditions that need to happen in prison. And I tell you, thinking about this concept, hospitals have to be up to a certain code. Like, there's a board that's checking that they maintain up to code because they're responsible for people. And if they're not up to that code, the hospital gets shut down. We need to do the same with prisons. Prisons need to operate at a certain standard. They need to have certain conduct codes that they need to follow and principles, certain things to make sure that they have the essentials and that they're running properly and that they're not serving food that's contaminated, that they're not letting people take showers in water.
It's surreal for you to even say that there needs to be a code for people not to have contaminated food.
Come on, man. Like, they need to have a code, and that's where we are. And they need to make sure that they're putting a certain amount of people back into society and that they're reintegrating with jobs and that they're going out being productive, like that they have so many people taking mental classes. They need to be performing at a level. We can grade prisons. We can grade them. And if they're not performing at a certain grade level, shut them down. Instead of just letting somebody go and get a private prison, and just make money free reign. Like, you're not answering to nobody?
It's off the name of capitalism.
Yeah, those people, they've gone to jail. Those people going to jail, they don't matter no more. They're not a part of our society. Like, we're just gonna ignore them. Okay, what are you gonna do when they come back in?